You're on.
Okay. So we said on top of Daf Vav, we're bringing proofs to one of the ways of explaining Rabbi Shua that there's a heter for Kayanim and then the Meilah is off. So the first proof is Reb Shimon Yesh Neiser Shemailam Bay Yesh Neiser Shemailam Bay. Sometimes there's nicer that there is Meilah, and sometimes there's nicer where there's no Meilah. Nicer is the food that's left over. Ketzat. What's the case? Lan Lefnei Zrika. If it was left overnight and you didn't do the Zrika until the next day, so then Meilah. Meilah means that the korban is still in its original state. In other words, the Zrika doesn't help. La'achar Zrika. But if it was Lan La'achar Zrika, if the Zrika was done, then Ein Meilah ban. Then there is no Meilah. No, the Zrika work. Ktani Mias Meilah by. We said that there is Meilah. Lav Davishois Lemizrke. It must have been that you didn't do the Zrika, not because you didn't have time to do the Zrika. You could have done the Zrika, but you just didn't. So if you still had time to do the Zrika, that means that it was caught in the blood was received. So if you say heter Zrika, so then it should have been considered that it's already that the Meilah is off. It must be heter achila that you need to mamish do the Zrika. The Bais, it must have been lav davi shois the mizrei the Baisar kushmamina heter achila sheninu. It must mean that what's the reason over here? Why there still is Meilah? Because you didn't get to the state where it would be permissible to eat. You only got to the state where it's ready to be sprinkled. The Gemara says, "Lie." The kabli samach l'shkia sachama. The loy avishois l'mizrach. It was right before dark. So you don't even say ibay zarek. If he wanted, he could have sprinkled the blood. There was no time to sprinkle the He shechted it as it's coming out, the sun's setting. And he's receiving it exactly at that time. There was no chance to do Zrika.
Zarak means dark.
No, Zarak means to sprinkle the blood. Which word means dark? The kabli samach l'shkia sacham. Shkia sacham is the setting of the sun.
What?
Oh, ba'afela. That's ba'afela. Are you learning how many after here?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Shmuel, right? I'm a Shmuel ba'afela.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, no, here we're not talking about dark. Here we're talking about the sun setting. So it becomes dark, but it's once the sun sets, it's too late to do the Zrika. And now the Gemara goes on. It says, "Aval havishois mai." But let's say there was time to sprinkle the blood. Hachinami dein Meilah. Then we would say that there's no Meilah. You see. Now we're taking it that, okay, let's say the other case. So let's say, if we would say that there was time, then we would say there's no Meilah. So the Gemara asks straight away, if that's the case, so my area, why specifically? It's a hard word to translate, because normally my means what? And everyone thinks it's why, because it rhymes with why. But here, my area, it's supposed to be...
Why does it mention?
It's supposed to be, what is the reason that it's grabbing specifically this case? In short, we say why specifically the Tani Lefnei Zrika, that it says that it was before the Zrika. Listen, Kaidem Shkia Lachar Shkia. Why do we have to make a distinction between when there's Meilah and there's no Meilah, between if the Zrika was done by day or if it was done tomorrow? We could just say if it was sunrise sunset would change the whole halacha here. When it says Hachinami Ktani, this is actually what it means. Kaidem Shir Lezrika or Lachar Shir Lezrika. An easy answer. Where it says, when it says before the Zrika or after the Zrika, it means before it was, if it was able to do the Zrika or it was not able to do the Zrika, we just throw in a word and we adjust the Bais. And where are we holding here? That really heter Zrika shenino. The heter is for if you're able to do the Zrika, then that's good enough. That's where we would.
That's when you lose the Meilah.
That's right. So what we're saying now, not that really heter Zrika shenino. It's just that you don't have a proof that it's heter achila, because we can always translate the brisa to say that it's heter Zrika. Okay. The next Bais is exactly like the first one, with one difference. That instead of talking about Naisar, that there's Meilah, we're going to talk about Pigel, that there's Meilah. What does that mean? That means that there's going to be a problem with this carbon, and nevertheless, it's still going to be Meilah. Okay. Tashma Reb Shimon Aimer. Shimon says, it's interesting because Reb Shimon is the one that holds Kol Arayli Zarek Zarek Dami. Reb Shimon was always the Kol Aray. He's into the potential. Yeah. So, let's see. Yesh Pigel Shemaylam by Yesh Pigel Shemaylam by. There's a case of Pigel where there's Meilah, and there's a case of Pigel where there's no Meilah. Ketzad. Lifnei Zrika. If you eat it before the Zrika, then it's Meilam by. Then there's Meilah. But La'achar Zrika, if you eat it after the Zrika, then ain't Meilam by. So apparently the Zrika is what's changing the status of this carbon. We're discussing here the Zrika on a Pigel, the Zrika on a carbon that's Pigel. How much can the Zrika accomplish? Because the carbon is puzzle anyway. Right. And nevertheless, we're saying that the Zrika is accomplishing something. But on the side, what we're getting is that where does the Meilah go?
But the Pigel took place during the Shechita.
Right. Or Kabbalah.
Right. But the Zrika.
And the Zrika is actually going to do something.
Even though it's a puzzle.
So, but what we're getting from this is that where does the Meilah go off on a carbon that's Kachi Kachim? It starts off Meilah, that you're not allowed to benefit from it, and if you do this, it's a violation of Meilah, and then that's going to go off after a certain point when there's a heter l'kainim, and we're saying that the Zrika is the heter l'kainim. That means that what's the heter? The heter for the kainim to eat it. Ketani miyas lifnei Zrika meilam bay. We said that before Zrika, there still is Meilah. And Lav Davi Shois Lemizrike. It must have been that you had time to do the Zrika, but you didn't. Di Bai Zarek. Uktani Mailam Bai. Shma Mina Heter Achila Shanino. It must be that the main heter here is to eat it. And once the Zrika is done, then there's the Meilah's off. The Gemara says, Lai. Lai Avi Shois Lemizrike. There was no time. Aval Havi Shois Lemizrike Mai. But let's say there was time. Okay, so I read 2 sentences there. You have to know there was no time. So that's the whole explanation. Okay, so there was no time. So we're back to Heter Zrika Shalino.
That you actually have
that there was no time to sprinkle it, and there was no time to sprinkle it. Loi. The Leia B'Shois L'Mitzvah. So
there was no time to sprinkle it, but you said, but the potential at the moment of Kabbalah was there, and that was the moment, the turning point.
Right. So what we're saying is, if you didn't have time to do this, to do the Shrika, so in this case, so this is what we're going to say. In this case, where it's Pigel, we're going to say that there's no Meilah. But in the case of a kosher animal, we would say that would be enough. That would be Heter Zrika Shanina. That's where the Gemara is switching over here. We started off saying that it's Heter Achila, because you had time to do the Zrika and you didn't. And it's still not eligible. There still is Meilah. So now we switch. We say, no, you didn't have time. And so what's the reason why there's no Meilah here? It's only because it's Pigel. But if it would have been a kosher carbon, then there would be no Meilah. That means that you have to throw that point in over there. So the Gemara says, but let's say there was time. Then it would have gone out of Meilah. So my year, so then why do we have to say that the Zrika was done? To make a distinction between when there's Meilah, when there's no Meilah. We have a better way of distinguishing in this halacha between Meilah and no Meilah, if there was time or there was no time. That's an easy one to fix. That's actually what we meant before Shkia and after Shkia. We said before the Zrika, after Zrika. We didn't mean before the actual Zrika. We meant before, if there was time to do the Zrika, or we meant that there was no time to do the Zrika. Tashma. Hapigul b'katshi kachim mayolim. Pigul, a carbon that has pigul, those thoughts of chutzlas manai, there's going to be me'ila remaining in that carbon. So something's not going to be effective here to take off the me'ila. Meilah Daf. What are we talking about? When we said that there still is me'ila, probably we're talking about that the zrika was done. Okay, now I have to add in. Why is there no me'ila? Why is there still me'ila? Because it was pigul. Even though the zrika was done, there still is me'ila. Mashma, that if it wasn't pigul, then the zrika would have been taken away the me'ila. So that means heter achila shaninu. Gemara says ushma mina heter achila shaninu. Gemara says loy zarak. Okay, now we have to do the same thing. You didn't do the zrika. And dafka over here by pigul, you didn't do the zrika. Over here, there still is me'ila. But by a regular carbon, you didn't do the zrika, the me'ila would have gone off. That means heter zrika shaninu. Aval zarak mai, but if you did do the zrika, what would be hachinami dein mailam by? Then that would be the me'ila goes off with the zrika. My area, the tani bekachim kalam ein mailam by. We throw in one more phrase of the brisa that we didn't have before. What this brisa says, hapigul bekachi kachim mayalim, bekachim kalim ein mayalim. Now, by kachim kalim, it starts off without me'ila. After the zrika, then certain parts of the animal get me'ila. So what we're saying here is that the zrika of pigul, if it's kachim, the me'ila doesn't go off until, because the zrika is not effective. Right. But by kachim kalim, we should say, by kachim kalim, the zrika... but by kachim kalim, the zrika is also not effective, and it doesn't become me'ila. So what are we doing over here? We have what we're doing in the Bais is we're showing a contrast between me'ila and no me'ila. What's our contrast? We're saying that kachim, the me'ila remains because it's pigul and the zrika isn't effective. By kachim kalim, it doesn't become me'ila because the zrika is not effective. The Gemara is asking, if you're just trying to make a contrast between me'ila and no me'ila, so why don't you just say like this? Listen, kan lefnei zrika kan la'achar zrika. You can get that contrast by kachim itself. If the zrika makes a difference, as the way we're saying it, because we just said that it's loy zarak, and that's why there still is me'ila. But if you do zrika, then the me'ila would go off. So why do you have to make a difference between where there is me'ila, where there's no me'ila? To get that out, you said kachim, there is me'ila. Kachim kalim, there's no me'ila. I can give you me'ila and no me'ila in kachim itself. Before the zrika, there's me'ila, and after the zrika, there's no me'ila. So it's ha'asa. See, what the Gemara is going to say is, I know you can do that, but that's not what we're trying to bring out. We're trying to bring out a different point. The Gemara says, ha'asa lashminan, we're trying to say something else. Not just the contrast of me'ila or no me'ila. We're trying to bring out kol la'asuye l'dei me'ila, zrika ketikna ma'isi l'dei me'ila. Anything that's coming to me'ila, proper zrika will bring it to me'ila. Kol la'afuki l'dei me'ila. Anything that's supposed to take it out of me'ila, afilu shalei ketikna, even if it's not done properly, nami mafkil l'dei me'ila. Which means like this, very interesting, that kachim, which is me'ila, to get it out of me'ila, I can do zrika, even though it's pigul, and the me'ila will go off. That's by a regular carbon, me'ila goes off after the zrika. Kachikalim, which is there's no Meilah before the Zrika, and you want it to be effective, that the Zrika should count. The problem is that this is a Zrika of Pigel, it doesn't become Meilah afterwards. So we have a bigger Chiddush here than just to give a contrast of Meilah, no Meilah. So this is gonna, it's interesting because this contradicts Rav Gidl. We were mentioning Rav Gidl that says that Meilah doesn't work, that anything from Pigel is not effective by for the Zrika of Pigel doesn't do anything. Now we're saying the Zrika of Pigel does. By Kachi Kachim it does, by Kachi Kalim it doesn't. So we accept half of Rav Gidl.
Such a funny word, pickle.
Pickle by Gidl.
This Mefarish on the bottom says that in Masechta Menachem we had a strong question on Rav Gidl already, and because we had a Stam Bais, and we also have Reb Shimon that hold that Zrikas Pigel Maitzia Midei Meilah B'Kachi Kachim, that by Kachi Kachim, if you do Zrika, even though the carbon was puzzle, but the Meilah goes off, and that's a Kasha on Rav Gidl. And now we have a new Mishnah, we're on Vav on the Bais. Basar Kachi Kachim, Shiatzel Lefnei Zrika Stamim. You have the flesh. You can just imagine the children of Eily they would rush to eat the meat. So they didn't wait for the Zrika. That's what it says. So here you have flesh of a sacrifice was taken out of the Bais Hamikdash before the Zrika, but then it's brought back in. So someone was in a rush over here, but then he realized the mistake and then brings it back in. And so what happened now? The Zrika was done. Now, normally Zrika right, but it went out before the Zrika, and then it came back in, and the Zrika's done. Now, normally the Zrika would take off the Meilah. The question is, will it take off the Meilah on this that already went out? It already is puzzle. So Rabbi Lezer Aimer Meilah Daf. Rabbi Lezer says there's Meilah, which means Rabbi Lezer is saying that the Zrika doesn't help for this issue. This is meat that is puzzle. The Zrika is not going to be effective on this meat. And you're not chayav for pigel noiser v'tamei. Why? Because it's so puzzle. In order for it to be pigel, it needs to be kosher. Yeah, it has to be eligible to be pigel. Here, it's not even eligible to be pigel. It's puzzle because of yaitse. And I need the Zrika to establish it to be a valid sacrifice to get those other prohibitions. But the Zrika is not effective on it. So therefore, I can't get it's not even eligible for those prohibitions. Rabbi Kiva says, Ein Mayalim Bai, the Zrika was effective. The Meilah goes off. And you chayav for those other prohibitions because it's eligible for those things to take effect because the Zrika worked. I'm Rabbi Akiva.
So why don't they just bring this Mishnah as a contradiction, as a proof to all the things we were discussing before?
That the Zrika is the one that makes it.
Right. Here's a plain, straight,
Right.
forget the
Right.
Amorai.
Well, we did bring these types of things before, and we said that it's Roy for maybe it was by day, and there was time to do the Zrika. We just edited things like that. I don't know.
It's Rabbi Lezer, which Rabbi Lezer?
This is Rabbi Eliezer Agadol, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenes.
But wasn't that his teacher?
He is, he's the Talmud Chaver. Rabbi Kiv is the Talmud Chaver of Rabbi Eliezer. Yeah. They were together by the Suda on Pesach.
Oh wow, the Shekin.
You have the Haggadah already? You have the...
Okay.
Okay.
It's hard to read.
No, but his main point is that you can reestablish the conversation. Okay. Rabbi Akiva says, "Ein Mayalim Bai." Okay, Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is going to bring a proof. Say, "Harei hamafresh chatasi va'avda v'hifresh acheres tachtea v'achach nimtzri shayna v'rishtem ein this." usually we said that there's such a thing as chatayis hamesos. There's a chatas that needs to be left to die. Why? Because the atonement was already brought. But there is a solution, a strange solution, that where it doesn't need to be left to die. What could be done, which changes the rules, is that if you take both chatayis, if you shecht one of them, then the other one becomes extra, and it has to be left to die. What this guy does is he shechts both of them, and he doesn't do the zrika on the first one yet. He shechts them both. Then he does the zrika on one of them. So what happens here is because the zrika could have been done on either one, there's no preference to which one he should be doing the zrika on. So it really means that they both have this eligibility to be the karban. So what happens is like kashem shedama paiter spesara kachu paiter spesar chaverta. What's going to happen is the sprinkling of the blood of one of them is going to take the Meilah off the other one as well, because both of them were eligible. So we have two sacrifices with the zrika of one works. He says, "In pater damas pesar chaverta min Meilah, dinu shiftes pesar atzma." What about its own? What is he referring to? That piece of meat that left the Bais Hamikdash that came back in. He says, if the zrika will take the Meilah off the other sacrifice, it should take it off its own flesh on the flesh that left and came back in. That's his proof, and there's no response to that. Let's go the other way. The first half of the Mishnah was talking about kachi kachim, where after the zrika, the Meilah goes off. Now the other way is kachim kalim, that after the zrika, the Meilah goes on. So what happened here is that some of the flesh left before the zrika, and it comes back in. Now we're going to do the zrika. So Rabbi Eliezer, Amerein Mayalim Behem. Eliezer says the zrika doesn't work exactly the same. Baruch Hashem, because of our time, they decided to keep their opinions the same. So it makes it easier on us. So it's exactly symmetrical there. He holds the same thing. That the zrika on something that's puzzle isn't effective. You're not chayiv because there was no zrika. In order for these things to work, for these prohibitions to take effect, there needs to be a good zrika. And Rabbi Kiva, it is a good zrika, and so therefore it becomes Meilah, and and those prohibitions that need a valid sacrifice for them to be prohibitions will happen for this sacrifice. The Gemara asks, "V'hani tarti lamali." Why do I need both of these machlekes and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Kiva? Like we said, they're exactly the same. It is necessary. Because if we would only say it to the first half by kachi kachim hava, I would have thought Bahakam Rabbi Eliezer over there. Rabbi Eliezer says Mayalim Bay that it's no good. Meilah, the zrika doesn't take effect, and there still is Meilah. Mishum de zrika ketikna mafke de Meilah shlei ketikna lei mafke de Meilah. Because you're trying to get rid of Meilah, trying to take it out of its Meilah status, and you're trying to take it out with the zrika that's not good. But to add on the rules of Meilah, Ma'idul Rabbi Akiva, he would say that just to be machmer, that's easy. So we'll go like Rabbi Akiva. If you by kachi kalim to bring on the Meilah, we'll go like Rabbi Akiva that says that the zrika that's not perfect, we'll bring on the Meilah. Because that's just a chumrah. And if we would only say the second case, Hava, I would have thought Gabi Kachim Kalim Hudam Rabbi Akiva Meilamem. Then I would have said Rabbi Akiva is being machmer. Rabbi Akiva is saying that there's by Kachim Kalim, even though the zrika is not perfect because the flesh already left the temple and it came back in, I would say that Rabbi Akiva is being machmer and saying that we do apply Meilah. That's just a chumrah. Dafilu zrika is like tikna ma'isi Meilah. Even though it's not perfect, it will bring to Meilah. Aval kachi kachim, but by kachi kachim, delafukehu, you're trying to take off Meilah. Shleit ketikna leimafke de Meilah. I would say that it doesn't take it off because that's a kula, and you don't have a perfect zrika. Kamash malan, that no, their opinions are much stronger than that. It's not just we don't know what to do. We're being machmer just because it's not perfect. No. Each one of their opinions is very specific. That Rabbi Eliezer holds that the zrika needs to be done perfectly for it to take effect, and Rabbi Kiva holds no, that the zrika will accomplish something even though the flesh has left. Let's leave it over here because it starts a new sugya. Okay.